The letter had my old name on it. Not Evelyn Marsh, the name on my trailer lease, my Medicare card, and the pill bottles lined up beside my kitchen sink. Evelyn Rourke. A name I had not used since the year I buried my son, closed my diner, and decided some parts of a life were better left unclaimed. At first, I thought the certified envelope meant eviction. Everyone in Cedar Hollow Trailer Park had been waiting for that letter. The land had been rumored sold for months. A developer from Knoxville wanted to turn our uneven gravel roads, patched roofs, and porch plants into storage units or townhomes or one of those medical office parks with tinted windows and no shade. The owner kept saying nothing had been signed yet, but men who say nothing has been signed yet usually already know where the pen is. So when a certified letter came addressed to a name I had buried 32 years ago, I thought some lawyer had found an old record, an old lien, an old piece of my life that could be used to push me out. I opened it with my kitchen trash can under the leak above the stove, because rain was coming through the ceiling again. 3 drops hit the blue bucket before I finished the first paragraph. Then I saw the words. Music rights matter. Composition registered in 1994. Evelyn Rourke. I almost threw the letter away. People like me do not get found by lawyers unless someone wants money from us, wants land under us, or wants a signature we cannot afford to refuse. But 3 days later, in a meeting room at the county library, a woman in a navy suit slid a yellowed copyright form across the table and said, "Mrs. Marsh, there is a song with your old name on it." I looked down. At the top of the page was the title of a song I had heard in grocery stores, funeral homes, waiting rooms, old movie soundtracks, and late-night radio shows that played music for people too tired to sleep. Leave the light on. Below it were 2 writer names. Jonah Vale. And under his, Evelyn Rourke. For a moment, I could not hear the rain tapping the library window. I could not hear the vending machine humming in the hallway. I could not hear the young man beside the lawyer opening a hard black case and taking out a cassette tape sealed in a clear plastic sleeve. All I could hear was the bell above my diner door from 32 years ago. And a boy with a guitar saying, "I don't know how to finish it. My name is Evelyn Marsh now." Most people in Cedar Hollow Trailer Park call me Evie, though I have never cared for the nickname. It sounds too soft for a woman who has spent the last decade checking the weather forecast before bed to decide where to place the buckets. The trailer was not supposed to become my life. That is what people say when they first move into a trailer park. Just for a while. Until the bills settle. Until the divorce is final. Until the knee heals. Until the next job. Until the insurance comes through. Until grief becomes something that does not follow you from room to room. Then one season becomes another. Your good couch gets too old to move. The neighbor's dog learns the sound of your truck. The woman in lot 14 starts bringing you tamales every Christmas Eve whether you ask for them or not. The rust stain on the back step becomes familiar enough that you stop seeing it. Then one morning, you wake up and realize temporary has learned your address. My trailer sat at the far end of the park, where the gravel road turns soft after rain. It was white once, probably, before sun, dust, and Tennessee humidity gave it the color of old bone. One corner of the roof dipped just enough that water collected there, and when storms came from the west, the leak over the stove always started first. I had 3 buckets for heavy rain. 1 yellow. 1 blue. 1 old mop pail with a cracked handle. I knew where to place them without looking. My Social Security check covered lot rent, utilities if I was careful, groceries if I bought chicken thighs instead of breasts, and most of my prescriptions if I skipped the calcium supplement the doctor insisted mattered more than my budget believed. I did not go to the food pantry unless I had to. That was pride, not virtue. Pride has kept many people hungry. Mine had kept me hungry often enough that Rosa Delgado from Lot 12 stopped asking and simply left grocery bags beside my steps with lies attached. Bought too many onions. My cousin sent extra rice. The church gave me beans I don't eat. Rosa ate beans twice a week. We both knew it. We also both knew some kindness has to wear a disguise or it gets refused at the door. The week the certified letter arrived, Cedar Hollow had already started coming apart. Not physically. Not yet. But fear has a sound. You could hear it in the office where people paid lot rent with exact change and asked questions they pretended were casual. Any update on the sale? You heard anything? They can't just throw us out, right? They have to give notice, don't they? Notice. That was the word everybody feared. Some people had nowhere else to park a life. My neighbor Earl had lived in Lot 9 for 19 years and could not move his trailer if he wanted to. The axles were gone. Rosa's sister slept on her couch. Miss Janice in Lot 3 had an oxygen machine and 2 cats old enough to have opinions. We were not a community in the way brochures use the word, but we knew who needed a ride to the clinic, who had a working ladder, who could fix a toilet float, and who should not be left alone after bad news. Then the letter came. The mail carrier, Denise, stopped outside my lot instead of leaving the envelope in the row of boxes near the park office. That was the first bad sign. Denise knew every dog in the park by name and every person by what kind of trouble their mail usually brought. She walked up holding a stiff white envelope. "You have to sign for this one, Miss Marsh." I was standing on a step stool with duct tape in one hand and a square of plastic in the other, trying to patch the stove leak before afternoon rain. "From who?" She looked at the return address. Jensen, Hale and Whitcomb. Nashville. Lawyers. Nothing good comes in a certified envelope from lawyers when you're 72 and living under a roof that needs permission to survive weather. I climbed down too fast and felt my left knee complain. Denise held out the signing pad. "You want me to wait while you open it?" That was kindness. I shook my head. "No. If it bites, I'd rather be alone." She smiled because she did not know whether I was joking. Neither did I. Inside, the letter was addressed to Evelyn Rourke, formerly of Rourke's Diner. I sat down at the little kitchen table. Not because I wanted to. Because my body had read that name before the rest of me was ready. Evelyn Rourke. The woman who owned a roadside diner near the Kentucky line. The woman who still wore an apron at midnight because closing never really meant closed if somebody needed coffee. The woman who had a husband named Tom, a son named Luke, and a neon sign shaped like a coffee cup that flickered when the weather turned cold. The woman I stopped being when Luke died. The letter said the firm had been attempting to locate me regarding a music rights matter connected to a composition registered in 1994. Music rights. Composition. Registered. It sounded like a scam that had gone to college. At the bottom, in careful ink, someone had written, "We understand this may be unexpected. We are not seeking payment from you. We are asking to verify whether you are the Evelyn Rourke named in certain historical records, ****. People like me learn not to trust sentences that begin by telling you what they are not doing." I folded the letter back into the envelope and set it beside the salt shaker. Then I unfolded it again. Rourke's Diner. I had not said that name aloud in years. Rosa came over that afternoon because she had seen the mail carrier come to my door and because trailer parks are built on gossip, concern, and thin walls. She knocked twice and let herself halfway in. "You dead?" "Not yet." "You get bad news?" I looked at her. Rosa was 68, round-faced, sharp-eyed, with gray hair always twisted into a clip and house shoes she wore outside no matter how many times I told her the gravel would ruin them. I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, lips moving. When she reached the law firm name, she made a sound low in her throat. People like us don't get found by lawyers unless someone wants something. That is exactly what I thought. What music rights matter? If I knew that, I'd be less irritated. She looked at the name again. Evelyn Rourke. I reached for the letter. She did not hand it back right away. You never told me that name. There are many things I have not told you. Usually because you are stubborn, not because they are important. It can be both. Rosa sat down across from me without asking. Are you calling them? No. She waited. I said no. You also kept reading it. I looked at the duct tape patch above the stove. The plastic had already started peeling at one corner. It could be about the park sale, I said. Then they would use Marsh. I hated that she was right. The letter requested that I call to schedule a meeting. Not at their office. At a public place of my choosing, it said. That part bothered me most. Scammers push. Collectors threaten. Lawyers summon. These people were trying not to frighten me. I distrusted that almost more than I distrusted threats. Rosa tapped the envelope. You call them from my phone. Not yours. If it is a scam, they will not get your number. That is not how phones work. I know enough. She did not leave until I called. The woman who answered was polite. Too polite. She connected me to Mara Jensen. Mara Jensen had a calm voice, the kind people use when they know panic is possible and do not want to feed it. Mrs. Marsh, thank you for calling. I don't know you. No, ma'am. I don't know anything about music rights. I understand. Is this about money? A pause. Eventually, yes. But not money we are asking from you. That did not help. She asked if I would be willing to meet in person. I told her I was not inviting lawyers into my trailer. She said that was perfectly fine. I suggested the county library because it had security cameras and a meeting room with windows. She agreed too quickly. That also made me suspicious. The meeting was set for Thursday at 10 in the morning. I spent Wednesday night not sleeping. Rain came around midnight. The yellow bucket filled first. Then the blue. Then the mop pail. I lay on my bed listening to drops hit plastic and thought about the last winter Rourke's diner stayed open. I thought about the bell over the door. I thought about a boy whose name I had not spoken in decades. Jonah. At 9:30 Thursday morning, Rosa insisted on driving me. My truck runs, I said. Your truck sounds like it smokes unfiltered cigarettes. So do you. She laughed and took my arm anyway. The county library was a low brick building with a flag out front and a children's mural painted on the side. I had not been inside since tax season, when volunteers helped seniors file returns at folding tables. Mara Jensen was waiting in meeting room B. She was younger than I expected. Mid-40s, maybe. Brown hair cut at her jaw, navy suit, no flashy jewelry. Beside her sat a man around 50 with wireframe glasses and a hard black case on the floor near his chair. This is Simon Keene, Mara said. He is a music rights auditor. I didn't know those existed. Simon smiled slightly. Most people are happier not knowing we exist. That was the first thing either of them said that sounded human. Rosa sat beside me with her purse on her lap and her expression arranged to say she would bite if necessary. Mara placed a folder on the table. Mrs. Marsh, before we discuss anything specific, I need to confirm whether you were once Evelyn Rourke. The name moved through the room like a draft. I looked at the folder. Why? Because that name appears in multiple records connected to a composition registered in 1994. I never wrote music. Simon leaned forward. That may depend on what you mean by wrote. I mean I did not write music. Mara opened the folder but did not yet push anything toward me. Did you once own Rourke's Diner near Bell Creek, Tennessee? I stared at the table. The library meeting room had a scratch near the edge shaped like a sideways V. Yes. Did you operate it during the winter of 1992? Yes. Do you remember a young man who may have passed through that winter? 18 years old, possibly recently out of foster care. He carried a guitar. Rosa turned to look at me. I did not look back. A lot of young people came through that diner. That may be true. That town sat on a highway. People stopped. People left. Did one of them call himself Jonah? The scratch in the table blurred. I folded my hands. Maybe. Mara did not push. Simon opened the hard case on the floor and removed a clear plastic sleeve. Inside was a cassette tape with a handwritten label. The ink had faded. I could not read it from where I sat. This was found in Jonah Vale's private archive, Simon said. It is a restored copy. The original tape is too fragile to play more than necessary. At the name Jonah Vale, Rosa's eyebrows rose. She knew the name. Everybody did, even people who said they did not follow music. Jonah Vale had written the kind of songs that followed people through life without asking permission. Songs played during end credits. Songs played in bars after midnight. Songs played at memorial services when families had no words left. Songs people claimed made them think of their mother, their brother, their husband, a friend from the war, a child they did not know how to mention without breaking. I had heard his most famous song more times than I could count. In grocery stores. In waiting rooms. Once at a funeral for a woman from the trailer park whose daughter played it from her phone beside the casket. I never liked hearing it. That is not true. I never liked what it did to me. Simon placed a small digital recorder on the table. We transferred the tape so we could play it without damaging the original. I don't want to hear anything. Mara nodded. That is your choice. That irritated me. Permission always does when you are braced for force. Rosa touched my sleeve. Maybe hear it. I glared at her. She did not move her hand. Mara said, before we play this, I want to be clear. This is not the commercial recording. This is an early demo. There is background sound. It may be difficult. Difficult how? Simon said, you may recognize the room. I almost stood then. I almost walked out of the county library and back to Rosa's car and told her to take me home, where at least the buckets made honest noise. Instead, I nodded once. Simon pressed play. First came hiss. A soft mechanical breath. Then the low knock of something being set on a table. Then a bell. Not a clean studio sound. A real bell. Metal and glass. The bell over my diner door. My fingers went cold. A young man's voice said, close to the microphone, I don't know how to finish it. Another sound. A coffee pot sliding back onto its warmer. Then my voice. Younger. Tired. Rougher than I remembered. Then stop trying to finish it and tell me what you're scared to say. I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. Turn it off. Simon stopped the recording immediately. No one spoke. Rosa's hand was over her mouth. Mara did not look surprised. That made me angry, though she had done nothing wrong. I pointed at the recorder. That is not yours. No, Simon said quietly. It is not. That was in my diner. Yes. You had no right to. My voice broke. Not from rage. From being dragged backward too fast. Mara closed the folder. Mrs. Marsh, we can stop for today. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to gather my purse, leave the meeting room, go home, and put the old name back where it belonged. But the bell was still ringing inside me. And under it, a boy's voice. I don't know how to finish it. I sat down. My knees were not steady. Who gave you that tape? Jonah preserved it, Simon said. It was in his archive. Jonah Vale is dead. The sentence came out like an accusation. Mara's face softened. Yes. He died last year. I knew that too. It had been on television. A songwriter dead at 61. Heart failure in his sleep, they said. Radio stations played his songs for days. People called in with stories. I had turned off the radio. I had not known why. Now I did. Mara slid one paper across the table. It was a copy of a copyright registration. Old. Yellowed. Typed. At the top was the song title. Leave the Light On. Below it. Writers, Jonah Vale / Evelyn Rourke. My old name sat there in black type like it had been waiting patiently while I got old. I stared at it. That is wrong. Simon said, it has been that way since the first registration. I didn't write that song. Mara said, Jonah believed differently. I said things. People say things. Simon looked at the cassette. Sometimes one sentence is the door a song needs. I pushed the paper back. No. No, that is wrong. Rosa spoke softly beside me. Evie. I turned on her. You do not know what you are talking about. She did not flinch. You are right. The room went quiet again. That was Rosa's gift. She could let you be unfair without making you feel less loved. Mara said, there are royalties attached to the composition. They have been held in trust because Jonah could not locate you. His estate renewed the search after his death. I laughed once. It did not sound like laughter. Of course. Money. There it is. This money is not being requested from you. It is owed to you. Nothing is owed to me. Simon said, the records disagree. Records don't know what happened. Mara leaned forward slightly. Then tell us. I looked at the copyright form. Leave the Light On. Jonah Vale. Evelyn Rourke. A song millions of people had heard. A name I had buried. I did not tell them everything that day. Not yet. I told them enough to make the room change. I said, he was hungry. Then I was back in 1992. Rourke's diner sat off Highway 47, outside Bell Creek, Tennessee, near the Kentucky line. Not in town exactly. Not far enough out to be romantic either. A place with cracked red vinyl booths, a counter worn shiny at the elbows, pie case glass that fogged in winter, and a neon coffee cup in the front window that blinked when the transformer got cold. The diner had belonged to Tom and me. Then to me. Then to nobody. That is the short version. The longer version begins with Luke. My son, Luke Rourke, was 19 when he died. Not in a car accident, though people always expect roads in stories like this. He drowned in May. A creek behind a friend's property after 3 days of rain. The boys had been drinking. Not enough to be monsters. Enough to be stupid. Luke tried to cross where the water ran faster than it looked. His friends said he laughed before he slipped. They said that to comfort me. It did not. The creek gave him back 2 days later. There are sentences that divide a life into before and after. That was one. Tom and I did not survive it together. That sounds like a failure, but I do not know if it was. Grief is not always a storm that brings people closer. Sometimes it is a wall built one brick at a time by two people trying not to blame each other for the weather. Tom needed to talk about Luke until the talking became a kind of worship. I needed to move. Cook. Clean. Wipe counters. Refill coffee. Count register change. Fix the freezer. Order napkins. Do anything that kept my hands from folding themselves around emptiness. Tom said I was avoiding grief. I said he was drowning in it. We were both right. By January 1992, he had moved into a rented place near the hardware store, and I was living in the small apartment above the diner. Luke's room at the house remained untouched because neither of us could decide who had the right to disturb it. I ran the diner alone. Badly, some days. I burned bacon. I forgot orders. I snapped at a trucker for asking if we had apple butter because Luke had liked apple butter and nobody should have to explain that in public. Still, the diner opened at 6 every morning. People came because people always come to places that feed them, even if the woman behind the counter looks like she has been awake since another life. The night Jonah came in, it was snowing. Not pretty snow. Not Christmas card snow. Wet, mean snow that stuck to hair and turned black along the highway. I was about to flip the sign to closed when the bell rang. He stood inside the door with cold on him like a second coat. 18, maybe. Too thin. Jean jacket wrong for January. Shoes cracked at the sides. A guitar case held tight against his chest. Not carried. Held. That was the first thing I noticed. The boy was shaking, but he had wrapped both arms around the guitar as if it were the thing that needed warmth. We're closing, I said. He nodded. I can sweep. His voice was hoarse. I didn't ask. I know. He looked at the floor, then at the counter, then at the kitchen door. I can sweep. Mop. Wash dishes. Whatever you need. I'm not asking for money. What are you asking for? He swallowed. Anything hot. There are moments when kindness feels like a decision. That night, it did not. It felt like my body moved before my bitterness could object. I pointed at a booth. Sit. I can work first. Sit before I change my mind. He sat. Carefully. Like people who have been moved along too often. I went into the kitchen and ladled chicken soup from the pot I had planned to throw out because it had been sitting too long. I warmed 2 biscuits, added butter, poured coffee, then dumped too much sugar into it because he looked like he needed calories more than taste. When I set it down, he stared at the bowl. You gonna charge me? Not if you eat before it gets cold. I don't have money. I heard you. He picked up the spoon. His hand shook so badly soup spilled onto the saucer. I looked away. People deserve privacy for hunger too. After half the bowl was gone, I asked, "Name?" He took another spoonful. "Jonah." "Last name?" He hesitated. "Vale." I could tell it might be true or might be something he had chosen 2 towns back. "Where you headed, Jonah Vale?" "Nashville." "Do you know anyone there?" "No." "Do you have a place to stay?" "No." "Do you have a plan beyond the word Nashville?" He looked at me then. A flash of pride behind exhaustion. "Not one you'd respect." That was the first time I almost smiled. "What makes you think I respect plans?" He looked around the diner. "People with places have plans." That sentence should have warned me. A boy who thinks shelter means certainty has never had enough of either. He finished the soup, the biscuits, and 2 refills of coffee. Then he stood and reached for the broom without asking. I let him sweep. Not because the floor needed it. Because he did. When he finished, the snow was still coming down sideways. He stood near the door with the guitar case in one hand. "Thank you," he said. I looked at the road. No headlights. No open motel for miles that would take a kid without cash. I heard Tom's voice before he said it in real life. "You cannot keep replacing Luke with strays." I heard the sheriff. "You alone here, Evelyn?" I heard my own fear. And beneath all of it, I saw Jonah turn up his collar before stepping into weather that did not care whether he survived the night. "The storage room is cold," I said. He stopped. "But it is warmer than the road." He turned. I pointed toward the back. "One night." He stared at me like I had said something in another language. "Why?" "Because I had a dead son. Because he was alive. Because Luke had once brought home a stray dog so muddy I could not tell its color and said, 'Mama, he found us, not the other way around.' Because I had spent 8 months being useless to the person I loved most. Because the world had many roads and too few warm rooms." I said, "Because it is snowing." The storage room had a cot from when Tom used to sleep there during ice storms, a space heater that worked if you kicked the plug, and shelves stacked with paper towels, canned tomatoes, cleaning supplies, and sacks of flour. Jonah slept with the guitar case against the wall side of the cot. I noticed that the next morning. Not hugged to his chest now. But close enough to reach if the room changed. He stayed one night. Then another. Then the weather cleared and he stayed because I asked if he could fix the back door hinge. He fixed it. Then the coffee warmer. Then the loose tile near the register. Then the shelf in the pantry that had leaned since August. He did not talk much at first. He asked before eating leftovers. He washed dishes without being told. He never stood behind me in the kitchen. That detail mattered later, when I realized he had learned not to startle people because people had startled him first. Every meal began the same way. "How much do I owe?" And every time I said, "Eat first." "Oh, later." At first, it annoyed him. Then it embarrassed him. Eventually, one night around the second week, he sat down to a bowl of stew and said it with me under his breath. "Eat first." "Oh, later." I pretended not to hear. The town heard about him by day 4. Of course they did. Bell Creek could turn weather into gossip if the forecast gave it enough room. A boy sleeping in Evelyn Rourke's storage room? A drifter? With a guitar? After what happened to Luke? People were not cruel in the way stories like to make them cruel. They were worse. Concerned. Concern is how small towns put gloves on judgment. Mabel from the pharmacy came in for coffee she did not want and asked if I was being safe. A trucker named Ron told Jonah there were shelters in Nashville if he was serious about going. The sheriff stopped by and asked if Jonah had ID. Jonah had an expired state card and a folded paper from the foster system that looked like it had been handled by too many offices. The sheriff looked at me. "You sure about this, Evelyn?" "No." He blinked. I refilled his coffee. "But I am sure about not sending him into the snow." That ended it for the sheriff, though not for everybody. Tom came the following Sunday. He did not come into the diner often after we separated. It hurt us both in different ways. He had lost weight, though he wore the same brown coat he had worn for years. His beard had more gray. Jonah was in the back, changing a fuse. Tom watched the kitchen door. "I heard you have a kid staying here." "A young man." "Evelyn." "What?" He lowered his voice. "You cannot keep replacing Luke with strays." I slapped him. Not hard enough to injure. Hard enough to tell the whole diner something had happened even though there were only 2 customers and both immediately studied their plates. Tom did not touch his face. He looked more sad than angry. I was sorry before my hand lowered. But I was also not sorry. "I am not replacing anybody," I said. "I am feeding someone who is hungry." Tom's eyes moved toward the back again. "That is what you think." "No. That is what I know." He left without finishing his coffee. Jonah heard. Of course he heard. That night, after closing, he packed his guitar case. I found him in the storage room folding the thin blanket. "Where are you going?" "Road." "Why?" "I'm not somebody's dead kid." I stood in the doorway. The heater clicked. The room smelled like flour dust and old cardboard. "No," I said. "You are not." He looked at me then. Angry. Good. Anger meant there was still enough of him to defend. "I didn't ask you to make me into anything." "I know. I can leave." "I know. I should. Maybe." That took some of the heat out of him. He hated when I did not argue the right way. After a moment, I said, "Tom was wrong to say it like that." He was not wrong that grief makes people selfish. Jonah's grip on the blanket loosened. "I don't want your grief. You do not have to take it. You have enough of your own." He looked away. That was the first night he told me about his mother. Her name was Ruth. She sang harmony in church and played guitar badly but with enthusiasm. She died when Jonah was 10. Pneumonia that became something worse because people without insurance wait too long to become emergencies. He went into foster care after that. 7 homes. 1 good for a while. 2 not terrible. 1 with a man who locked food cabinets. 1 with a woman who collected state checks and boys like laundry. He aged out with a garbage bag of clothes, $64, and his mother's guitar. "Why Nashville?" I asked. He sat on the edge of the cot. "Because if I get there and nothing happens, at least I will know." "Know what?" "That it was stupid to think I could be anything." I leaned against the doorframe. The words were too large for that small room. After a while, I said, "Stay until the weather holds." He looked at the blanket. "That all?" "No. Fix the freezer light tomorrow." His mouth moved. Almost a smile. "Eat first." "Oh, later," he said. I nodded. Now you're learning. The diner changed during those weeks. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But I did. After closing, Jonah played guitar in the last booth near the window while I wiped counters and counted the register. He played softly, as if the songs might scare themselves if handled too loudly. Sometimes he sang. Not full voice. Just under his breath. The first time I heard him sing clearly, I stopped wiping the counter. It was not that his voice was perfect. It wasn't. It cracked. It caught. It did not always know where to land. But it had a searching quality that made a person feel he was not performing a song so much as trying to find someone inside it. He had one song he could not finish. I knew because he kept circling it like a dog around a locked shed. Same chords. Different words. Crumpled receipts. Scratched out lines. A melody that made the diner feel less empty and more haunted. What is that one? I asked one night. He kept looking at the paper. Nothing. Sounds like a lot of nothing. It's for my mom. I stopped. He rubbed his thumb along the guitar neck. I've been trying to write it since she died. It keeps turning into garbage. That happens with things that matter. He looked up. You write songs? I write grocery lists. Then how would you know? Because grief makes garbage of most things before it makes anything useful. He considered that. Then went back to the receipt. A few days later, Luke's box arrived from the high school. I had forgotten about it. Or pretended to. A cardboard records box with his name written in marker. Things from his locker that I had never picked up. A counselor must have found it in storage and sent it along with an apology written on school letterhead. I left it in the diner office all day. Then 2 days. Then 3. On the 4th night, after Jonah went to sleep, I opened it. Luke's varsity jacket. A cracked comb. A library book he had never returned. A stack of detention slips. 2 Polaroids. A harmonica I did not know he had kept. And a laminated diner menu with handwriting on the back. Luke used to write things on whatever paper was nearest. Receipts, menus, napkins, school worksheets. Mostly nonsense. A joke. A phrase from a song. A line he thought sounded deep because teenagers are occasionally poets by accident. On the back of that menu, in Luke's slanted handwriting, were the words. Leave the light on for somebody. I sat on the office floor with the menu in my lap. I remembered the day he wrote it. Maybe 16 years old. Maybe 17. A thunderstorm had knocked power out across the highway, and I had insisted on leaving the diner's battery lantern glowing in the window even though we were closed. Tom said nobody would come in that storm. Luke said, leave the light on for somebody. I asked, who? He shrugged. Somebody who needs to know there's a place. I had forgotten that. Grief does not only make you remember. It also hides things too tender to touch. The next evening, I found Jonah holding the harmonica. Not playing it. Just holding. I reacted before I understood. That is not yours to touch. He froze. I crossed the room and took it from him. His face closed in a way I recognized too late. I'm sorry, he said. It was in my office. The drawer was open. I thought. You thought wrong. He nodded once. Set the guitar aside. Walked to the storage room. I stood there holding the harmonica, angrier at myself than at him, but anger once released does not easily return to its proper container. He did not come out for dinner. At 10 that night, I knocked on the storage room door. No answer. I opened it. He was sitting on the floor, coat on, guitar case packed. I said, "The harmonica belonged to Luke." He looked at the floor. I figured. I should not have snapped. "No, you should've. It wasn't mine." "No." That was not enough. He picked at a piece of duct tape on the guitar case. People always say sorry after they remind you where you don't belong. That hit me in a place I did not expect. I sat down on an overturned crate because my knees were worse at night. When Luke died, people brought casseroles. He looked up, unsure what to do with that. I know they meant well. But every casserole told me the same thing. They could go home after. I couldn't. Their kindness had an ending. Mine didn't. He was very still. "I do not know what I am doing with you here," I said. "Some days I think I am helping. Some days I think I am trying to prove something to a dead boy. Some days I think both can be true and still not be fair to you." Jonah's voice was quiet. "Do you want me to leave?" "No." I held out the harmonica. "But if you touch Luke's things, ask." He took it carefully. "I won't play it." "You can, if you ask." His eyes flicked to mine. I looked away first. The key night came near the end of his 3rd week. I remember because rain had melted the last of the snow and left the parking lot full of black puddles. The diner had been slow. We made $63 after expenses, if I counted generously. The freezer light still flickered even after Jonah fixed it. Tom had called and hung up without speaking. I knew it was him because no one else breathed that much pain into a phone. Jonah sat in the last booth with the guitar and a stack of order tickets. He had been working the same song for hours. I was refilling ketchup bottles when he slapped the pencil down. "I can't do it." I did not look up. "Then don't." "I have to." "Why?" He stared at me like the answer was obvious. "Because if I can't turn it into something, then it's just." He stopped. "Just what?" "Just gone." The diner was quiet except for the cooler motor. He looked out the window. "Does it ever stop feeling like they're supposed to walk in?" I knew who he meant. His mother. Luke. Everybody who should have known better than to leave us with their things. "No," I said. His face fell. I set down the ketchup bottle. "You just stop locking the door like they might." He looked at me. I thought about Luke's menu. Leave the light on for somebody. I thought about Jonah holding that guitar case like it was the last warm thing in the world. I thought about all the people I had failed to save by not knowing they were cold until after. "When you don't know what else to do," I said, "leave the light on for somebody. Somebody might still be trying to get home." Jonah did not move. Not at first. Then he grabbed an order ticket from the table and wrote so fast the pencil tore the paper. I went back to the counter because some moments deserve not to be watched directly. He wrote for 20 minutes. Then 40. The coffee went cold. The neon cup flickered. At some point, he whispered a line to himself and changed a chord. I did not know I was listening to the start of something that would outlive both of us. 3 days later, he was gone. Not dramatically. No argument. No goodbye at the door with a guitar on his back. I came downstairs at 5:30 to start coffee, and the storage room was empty. The cot was folded. The blankets stacked. The floor swept. On the counter, under the sugar jar, was a note written on the back of an order ticket. Thank you for the room. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the words. I'll pay it forward if I make it, asterisk asterisk. No last name. Just Jonah. I folded the note and put it in the register drawer. Then I noticed the harmonica was gone. Luke's harmonica. For a full minute, I could not move. Then I sat down in the booth where Jonah used to write and laughed once because pain sometimes wears the wrong mask. Of course, I thought. Of course the boy left. Of course he took something. Of course kindness is not a contract. I wish I could say I forgave him that day. I did not. I kept the note. But I kept it in the back of the drawer, under old receipts, not where I would see it. A year later, the diner closed. Not because of Jonah. Because money was thin, the highway traffic shifted, the roof needed replacing, and I was tired of keeping a place alive when I could not keep my family intact. I sold what I could. Stored what I could not bear to sell. Divorced Tom properly. Moved twice. Married a man named Paul Marsh for 6 years, kind enough but never inside the deepest rooms of me. When he died, I kept his name because Marsh was easier than Rourke. Rourke belonged to the diner. To Luke. To the woman who left a light on and still lost people. I did not want the name anymore. Back in the county library, Mara Jensen listened without interrupting. Simon made no notes. That surprised me. Writes people, I imagined, always taking notes. But he just listened. When I finished the part about Jonah leaving, my mouth tasted like coffee from 30 years ago. Mara said, "Did you keep the note?" "Yes." "Do you still have it?" "I don't know." That was a lie. Or close to one. I knew where it might be. Which is not the same as knowing whether I had the courage to open the box. Mara explained that before anything could happen, they had to verify identity. Evelyn Marsh had to be legally connected to Evelyn Rourke. Rourke's diner had to be connected to the address in the copyright records. Any surviving note, business license, tax document, photograph, returned correspondence, or old diner document would help. I almost laughed. You people show up 30 years late and give homework. Simon smiled faintly. Music rights often involve homework. Rosa took me home. She did not talk for half the drive. That was unusual enough to worry me. Finally she said, "You knew him." I knew a hungry boy for 3 weeks. You knew him. I looked out the window. Past gas stations. Storage units. A church sign that read, "Grace does not expire." I hated church signs. Sometimes they were right at inconvenient times. I thought he stole Luke's harmonica. Maybe he did. Thank you for comfort. I am not here to make you feel better if better is a lie. That was why Rosa and I were friends. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one was from the trailer park office. Not certified. Just folded badly and shoved into every mailbox at Cedar Hollow. Notice of change in ownership and future land use review. There it was. The polite language of displacement. The park had been sold. Nothing would happen immediately, the letter said. Residents would receive updates. The new ownership group was reviewing infrastructure, land use, and redevelopment options. Redevelopment options. I stood at the mailbox with the letter in one hand and Mara Jensen's business card in the other and felt my life become paperwork from both ends. Rosa came up beside me. You got it too. Everyone did. Earl from Lot 9 was already yelling at the office door even though no one was inside. Miss Janice stood near the mailboxes with her oxygen tube under her nose, reading the same paragraph again and again. I looked down the row of trailers. Porch plants. Rusted steps. Plastic chairs. A child's bicycle turned on its side. A whole neighborhood that rich men would call underused land. That night, I almost called Mara and told her I was done. Not because I did not believe her. Because believing her meant I had to become Evelyn Rourke again at the exact moment Evelyn Marsh might be losing the only home she had left. But the roof leaked. The park was sold. And somewhere in Nashville, a dead songwriter had left my old name on a song. I slept badly. By morning, I drove to the storage unit. My storage unit was 10 miles outside town, behind a tire shop and a chain-link fence with a keypad that worked every third try. I had not opened it in 4 years. The rent came out automatically, though I had missed the last payment 2 weeks earlier and told myself I would catch up after the next check. When I reached the gate, my code did not work. I tried again. Nothing. Inside the office, a young man with a beard and a vending machine soda told me my unit had a past due balance and auction notices would go out if it was not settled by Friday. Friday was 3 days away. How much? He told me. It was not impossible money. It was humiliating money. The kind of amount large enough to punish a poor person and small enough to make the punishment seem like their fault. I took out my checkbook. My hand shook, and that made me angrier than the bill. The young man saw the shaking and softened. I can waive one late fee. I wanted to refuse. Tried again. But the unit held Luke. The diner. The proof I used to exist. Thank you, I said. He looked relieved. The gate opened. Rosa met me there, because she had decided this had become a two-woman job whether I liked it or not. The unit smelled like cardboard, dust, old fabric, and close time. There was the diner sign, wrapped in a quilt. 2 boxes of menus. A metal cash box. Luke's varsity jacket in a plastic garment bag. Milk crates of tax records. Paul's fishing poles. A lamp I had meant to repair. I stood in the doorway with the key in my hand. Rosa said, "Breathe." I am breathing. Like you mean it. We spent 2 hours pulling boxes into the aisle. The first thing we found was the business license. Rourke's Diner. Evelyn Rourke, owner. The old address. Then tax records. Then a photograph of me behind the counter in 1991, hair pinned up, face thinner, eyes already learning to be guarded. Then Luke's box. I did not open it right away. I opened the metal cash box instead. Inside were old register tapes, a few foreign coins customers had left as jokes, a Polaroid of Tom asleep in a booth, and Jonah's note. Thank you for the room. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the words. I'll pay it forward if I make it. My fingers rested on the paper. The anger I had stored with it felt smaller now. Not gone. Just tired. Rosa was digging through a milk crate when she said, "Evie." She held up a stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band so old it snapped when she touched it. Returned mail. I took them. Most were old bills forwarded to the wrong place. A Christmas card from a cousin. A notice from a supplier. Then I saw the name. Jonah Vale. Postmark, 1995. Return to sender. Unable to forward. My throat closed. The envelope was addressed to Rourke's Diner. But by 1995, the diner had been closed, sold, and then bulldozed for a gas station that itself went out of business 10 years later. I sat on an overturned crate. The envelope had been opened once by the post office for return processing and resealed with tape. It was brittle at the edges. Inside was a money order. $43. And a folded note. The handwriting was neater than the order ticket note. Mrs. Rourke. I don't know if this address still works. I hope it does, ***. I owed you for soup, biscuits, coffee, and 3 weeks of not asking me to be less scared than I was. I guessed $43, but that is probably low, ***. I got to Nashville. It is harder than I thought. Most nights I still sleep in the car. But I played the song last week at a place where nobody listened, and one woman at the bar cried anyway. I think maybe that counts, ***. I still have the harmonica. I am sorry I took it without explaining. You told me to take something that would remind me to come back with proof I kept the light on. I do not know if this counts yet. I will try again when it does, ***. Jonah. Rosa had gone very still. I read the note twice. Then a third time. You told me to take something. I did not remember saying it. At first. Then I did. Not the words exactly. The moment. The night after I apologized for snapping at him. Jonah had asked if people kept objects because they were afraid memory was not enough. I said something about taking what reminds you to return instead of what helps you disappear. Had I told him he could take the harmonica? Had I meant it? Had grief erased the generosity and left only the wound? I pressed the note to my knee. For 30 years, a small hard place in me had believed Jonah took something of Luke's and vanished. For 30 years, that belief had made it easier not to think about him. Now the truth had been waiting in a storage unit, folded around $43. Not every apology reaches you on time. Some arrive after you have already built a life around not needing them. We brought the box to Mara the next day. This time I did not let Rosa drive. I drove my own truck with the window cracked and the old letter on the seat beside me. Mara and Simon met us at the library again. Simon handled the 1995 envelope like it was a relic. To me, it was still just a boy trying to be honorable with money he did not have. Mara photocopied the business license, tax records, divorce papers, and old photographs. Then she frowned. Not dramatically. Lawyers do not frown dramatically if they are good. They just let you notice that a problem has entered the room. What? I asked. The identity chain is strong, but there is a gap. I hate gaps. Your legal name change through the Marsh marriage is clear. Your divorce from Tom Rourke is clear. But the diner business closure paperwork lists the owner as E. Rourke, with no full first name. The copyright registration also uses the diner's old address. We may need additional corroboration that the Evelyn Rourke from the copyright records is the same person operating the diner during Jonah's stay. I stared at her. I have the business license. Yes. That helps. The tax records. Yes. The note. It helps emotionally. Legally, less than you would think. I laughed, because if I did not, I would scream. Of course it does. Simon looked at the old photograph. Is there anything with you, the diner, and the neon sign visible? Or anything with Luke's handwriting that connects to the phrase? Why Luke? He looked at Mara, then back at me. Because Jonah's archive references LR in connection with the dedication. We did not know who that was until you told us about Luke. The room shifted. I looked down at the box. Luke's name had entered paperwork now. Not just memory. I did not know whether that felt like rescue or trespass. Mara said gently, "There is time." "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. I thought of the trailer park notice. The auction warning at the storage unit. The roof. The years. There is not as much as you think. We went back to the storage unit that afternoon. This time, I opened Luke's box. The varsity jacket still smelled faintly of plastic, not him. That disappointed me in a childish way. I wanted impossible things from fabric. Under the jacket was the laminated menu. The one with Luke's handwriting. "Leave the light on for somebody." I took it out carefully. Behind it was a photograph I had forgotten existed. Rourke's diner at night. The neon coffee cup glowing in the window. Me standing by the register. Luke outside, leaning against the doorframe, holding a broom like a microphone. The date was written on the back in my handwriting. December 1991, Luke says we look famous. In the window behind him, the small battery lantern sat on the sill. The same lantern from the storm. The one I kept lit when the power went out. The one from Luke's sentence. I handed the photo to Rosa. She read the back and then looked at the menu. "Is this enough?" I did not know. But for the first time since the certified letter arrived, I wanted it to be. The documents were enough. Mostly. Legal processes do not open like doors in stories. They creak. They require copies, affidavits, signatures, calls, waiting, notaries, and people asking you to prove the same fact 3 different ways because one department does not trust the other 2. But a week later, Mara called and said the estate accepted the identity verification. "Mrs. Marsh, we can proceed." I was standing in my kitchen under a repaired plastic patch that had started leaking again. Proceed to what? To transferring the royalties held for you and giving you access to Jonah's full estate letter. I looked at the blue bucket. A drop hit the bottom. Then another. The sound was suddenly unbearable. "How much?" Mara told me. I sat down before she finished. The number was not as large as fairy tales make numbers. It was larger than my entire life had allowed me to imagine. Decades of performance royalties. Licensing. Film placements. Broadcasts. A trust Jonah had funded each time the song generated writer income that could not be paid to me because I could not be found. I kept one hand on the table. That is too much. It has accumulated for a long time. I lived 10 years with a roof leak under money that had my name on it. Mara was quiet. That was the first thing I felt. Not joy. Not shock. Anger. At the leak. At time. At myself. At Jonah for not finding me, though he had tried. At a world where money could sit quietly in accounts while I moved buckets under rain. Then the anger folded into something heavier. If I had known about the money earlier, what would I have changed? The trailer. The medicine. The storage unit. Maybe I would have bought back something of the diner before it became a gas station. Maybe I would have visited Luke's grave more because gas money would not matter. Maybe I would have answered a letter differently. Maybe I would have become someone I did not recognize. The next meeting was not at the library. It was at Mara's office in Nashville, because by then there were too many documents to spread across a public table, and because I had decided if lawyers were going to change my life, they could at least pay for parking. Simon showed me the royalty statements in order. The song did not become famous immediately. Jonah had spent years sleeping in cars, playing open mics, taking session work no one remembered, and mailing demos to people who mailed them back unopened. The first label wanted the song. They did not want my name. That was in the files too. A photocopy of a letter from 1994. Unknown non-professional co-writer presents rights clearance complications. Recommends sole writer registration under Jonah Vale prior to commercial release, ****. Under it, in Jonah's handwriting. No Evelyn Rourke, no song. Simon let me read it twice. The second time hurt more. Did he really refuse? I asked. Yes. He was broke. Yes. And he still refused? Simon nodded. The label delayed the release over it. His first manager argued with him. There are notes from the attorney saying he was making things unnecessarily difficult. I touched the copy. What did he say? Simon pointed to another memo. A lawyer's note from a phone call. Artist insists Rourke provided lyrical contribution and emotional framework. Refuses removal from writer line, ****. Emotional framework. I nearly laughed. It sounded ridiculous. It sounded precise. That was when I began to believe he had not only remembered me. He had defended me in rooms I never knew existed. Mara said, the first major placement came 4 years later. A film used the song in a funeral scene. After that, everything changed. Simon showed me articles. Tour photos. Album credits. Interviews where Jonah mentioned, the woman in a roadside diner who taught me what grief does with love when it has nowhere else to go. He never named me publicly. Mara explained why. He did not want people descending on you if he found you. And he hoped to ask permission first. Permission. That small word undid me more than the money. I had lived so many years inside systems that asked for nothing before taking. The park owner. Medical bills. Insurance letters. Time. Grief. Jonah had carried my old name around the world and still wanted permission to say it aloud. Mara removed an envelope from the folder. This was left with his estate instructions. He wrote it years ago and revised it several times. It was to be delivered only after we confirmed your identity and explained the royalties. My name was on the front. Not Evelyn Marsh. Not Evelyn Rourke. Just. For the woman who left the light on. I did not open it at Mara's office. I took it home. For 2 days, it sat on the kitchen table beside the salt shaker, exactly where the first letter had sat. Rain came the second night. The yellow bucket caught most of it. At 3 a.m, with the sound of water hitting plastic and Jonah's handwriting waiting under the lamp, I opened the envelope. Dear Mrs. Rourke. I do not know what name you use now. I hope life has been kinder to it than it was to the one I knew, ****. If you are reading this, they found you. I am sorry I did not do it myself. I tried more times than this letter can explain, and still not enough. That will be one of the regrets I carry wherever regrets go when the body stops, ****. I was 18 when I walked into your diner. I had my mother's guitar, $6, and a plan so thin it should not have been called a plan. I was hungry enough to steal and tired enough not to care what happened after, ****. Then you said, sit. I have been in rooms with presidents, actors, producers, people who owned islands, people who thought kindness was a charitable deduction. I have never heard a more important word than sit, ****. You fed me. You gave me a storage room. You let me work badly until I learned to work better. You did not ask me to tell my whole sad story before deciding whether I deserved soup. That mattered more than you knew, asterisk asterisk. The song happened because of you. I know you will argue with that. You probably already have. You did not write chords. You did not sit in the studio. You did not sign with a label or fight producers who wanted the second verse shorter, asterisk asterisk. But I had carried that melody since my mother died. It was a locked door. You gave me the line that opened it, asterisk asterisk. Leave the light on for somebody. Somebody might still be trying to get home, asterisk asterisk. I know now that the first part was Luke's. You told me about him in pieces, never all at once. I learned enough to understand that the line belonged to him before it belonged to me. I put your name on the registration because the song began at your counter. I kept Luke in the dedication because I think he was in the room that night too, asterisk asterisk. My hands stopped there. I had to put the letter down. Luke. I looked toward the narrow hallway of the trailer, as if there might be some room left in the world where my son was still 19 and writing strange little sentences on menus. After a while, I picked up the letter again. The original dedication was ER and LR. Nobody understood it. That was fine. I did, asterisk asterisk. The first time the song was played at a funeral, I hid in a bathroom and cried because I understood something I had not understood when I was 18. Your grief did not end when I left. You still handed me a light anyway, asterisk asterisk. That is what the song is about. Not grief becoming beautiful. Grief is not beautiful. Love is. And sometimes love keeps working after the person who started it is gone, asterisk asterisk. The money is yours. Not a gift. Not charity. Yours. I know you may not want it. Take it anyway. Pride is a poor roof. I slept under enough of them to know, asterisk asterisk. If there is more than you need, use it the way you used that diner. Feed someone before asking what they owe. Give some kid a warm room without making them prove they will become worth the trouble, asterisk asterisk. I spent my whole life trying to pay you back. I finally understand that the best I could do was pass it forward, asterisk asterisk. Thank you for the room. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the words. Jonah. There was a postscript. P.S. I did not steal the harmonica. I carried it until I had a reason to return. I never found you. It is in the archive with the order ticket. I hope that is all right, asterisk asterisk. I made a sound then. Not crying exactly. Something older. For 30 years, I had believed the harmonica was a theft. It had been a promise. The next time I met Mara and Simon, I asked about the archive. Simon looked relieved, as if he had been waiting for me to ask. There is a private studio archive outside Nashville. Jonah's instruments, manuscripts, early recordings. His estate maintains it. It is not open to the public, but you are invited. I don't like being invited to places where people know more about me than I know about them. Mara said, that is understandable. You say that a lot. I mean it a lot. I went anyway. Not immediately. First, the roof. That was Rosa's decision. You are not going to a famous dead man's studio while your kitchen rains. I have managed. You have suffered. There is a difference. She was right. I hired a roofer with the money. My money, Mara corrected me when I said it wrong. I still could not say it without flinching. The roofers came on a Monday. 3 men, 2 ladders, a radio playing classic country too loud. By noon, they had found more rot than expected. By 3, one of them asked if I wanted to see the damage. I climbed halfway up the ladder before Rosa yelled in Spanish and English at the same time. I got down. The roof was repaired by Friday. When the next rain came, I woke at midnight out of habit and listened for dripping. There was none. The silence felt expensive. I cried harder over that dry ceiling than I had over the trust statement. Money is abstract until it stops water from falling into your kitchen. Then came Cedar Hollow. The new owners sent a second notice in March. Redevelopment would proceed. Residents would receive relocation packets. Relocation packets are what people with offices call panic when they mail it in envelopes. I could have moved. I had the money now. That fact made me feel guilty in a new way. A month earlier, I had been one of the people waiting to be pushed. Now I could leave before the shove. Rosa said, "Do not make yourself poor again just to prove you are loyal." I am not. You are thinking something dangerous. I am thinking Earl cannot move that trailer. Earl cannot move a bowl of soup without complaining. Miss Janice has oxygen. Miss Janice also has 3 nephews who should be ashamed. Rosa. She sighed. You cannot save everyone. No. But I had learned that not saving everyone was not the same as saving no one. With Mara's help, and more paperwork than any act of decency should require, I bought time. Not the whole park. That would have been a fantasy. But enough. Legal assistance for residents. Relocation funds. A negotiated delay. A small emergency grant that helped Miss Janice move near her niece and Earl move his trailer before the Axels fully gave up on God. Rosa refused help until I told her I was buying her lot because if she moved away, I would have no one to insult me correctly. She said that was manipulation. I said yes. She accepted. That was the first thing I did with the money that felt like breathing. 2 weeks later, Mara drove me to Jonah's archive. Not in a black SUV. In a gray rental car that smelled faintly of pine air freshener and lawyer coffee. Rosa came too because by then she considered Jonah family business. The archive was not grand. That surprised me. It sat behind an old recording studio outside Nashville, a low building with cedar siding and a gravel lot. No fans. No gates. No marble wall of fame. Inside, the air was cool and dry. Gold records lined one hallway, but Simon walked past them like they were wallpaper. He led us into a smaller room. This is where he kept personal material, he said. There were guitars in cases. Not on display like trophies. Resting. Shelves of notebooks. Photographs. A denim jacket. A coffee mug with a crack through the handle. Then I saw it. A frame on the far wall. Inside were 3 objects. An order ticket from Rourke's Diner, pencil writing crowded across both sides. A scrap cut from the back of a laminated menu. And Luke's harmonica. My legs went weak. Rosa took my elbow. I stepped closer. The order ticket was Jonah's handwriting. Lines crossed out. Words circled. The phrase, "Leave the light on." Written 6 times, each darker than the last. The menu scrap was Luke's handwriting. Leave the light on for somebody. I touched the glass. Not the paper. The glass. As close as I was allowed to get to a boy who had been gone for 33 years and still somehow reached this room ahead of me. Beneath the frame was a small engraved plate. For ER and LR. Who left the first light on, asterisk asterisk. I could not breathe. Simon said something behind me, but it did not reach. Mara, maybe. Rosa. The room blurred. I saw Luke at 16, rolling his eyes while I told him not to write on menus. I saw Jonah at 18, hunched over the booth, trying to turn grief into something that would hold. I saw myself at 40, mean with pain, still opening the storage room door. I had thought my son's voice ended in a creak. I had thought my kindness to Jonah was a small, confused thing I did because grief had made me reckless. I had thought the world had swallowed both boys and left me with objects. But Luke's words had traveled. Through me. Through Jonah. Through radios and funeral homes and hospital rooms and strangers driving home after losing someone they did not know how to name. I put my hand flat against the glass. You got farther than I ever knew, baby, I whispered. No one rushed me. That was good. People are always rushing grief toward meaning, as if meaning is a stretcher and grief is blocking the hallway. I stayed in that room a long time. Before we left, Simon gave me a copy of the demo. Not the original. A copy. I thought you might want it, he said. I almost said no. Then I thought of the diner bell. Of my voice. Of Jonah saying he did not know how to finish it. I do, I said. The trust changed my life in practical ways. I will not pretend otherwise. People who say money does not matter usually have enough of it to be philosophical. I bought my trailer and the small piece of land beneath it after the redevelopment delay gave the old owner reason to negotiate. Then I bought Rosa's too, because she cried when she got the final rent increase notice and tried to hide it by yelling at her mailbox. I paid medical bills. Fixed my truck. Bought a coat without checking the clearance rack. Hired someone to clear the storage unit properly. Kept the diner sign. The rest became harder. What do you do with money that arrives carrying the weight of someone else's gratitude? For months, every suggestion felt wrong. A scholarship sounded too clean. A foundation sounded too grand. A donation sounded too distant. Then, in December, I went to a church basement where a nonprofit served dinner to young adults who had aged out of foster care. I was invited as a donor. I hated the word. A young woman sat alone at the end of one table with a backpack between her feet. She was maybe 18. Short hair dyed blue at the ends. Eyes that measured exits. Someone offered her a plate. She asked, "How much?" The volunteer said, "It's free." The girl did not move. Free is a dangerous word when life has taught you every kindness sends a bill later. I walked over before thinking. "Eat first," I said. She looked at me. "Oh, later." The words came back so easily I had to hold the chair to stay standing. The girl frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means the food is getting cold." She took the plate. That night, I knew. Not a foundation with a glass office. Not a gala. Not a scholarship board full of people using words like impact. A place. A warm one. With food first. Questions later. We found an old roadside restaurant outside town, not unlike Rourke's Diner, though smaller and uglier. The roof was sound. The kitchen needed work. The sign was blank. The booths were cracked. The parking lot had weeds pushing through. I loved it immediately. Mara tried to explain nonprofit structures. Simon introduced me to Jonah's estate board. Rosa argued with contractors. A local group that worked with foster youth agreed to partner with us if we did not try to do everything ourselves. "I am old, not stupid," I said. Rosa coughed. I named it the Porch Lighthouse. Not the Luke Rourke Foundation. Not the Jonah Vale Center. Both names were inside it already. The Porch Lighthouse would have a kitchen, laundry, showers, lockers, 2 emergency rooms upstairs for short stays, a job board, a music corner, and a rule printed by the door. Eat first. Oh, later, asterisk asterisk. Another sign by the counter said. No sermons. No pity. Coffee is fresh at 6 asterisk asterisk. Opening night was not a ceremony. I refused ribbon cutting. I refused speeches. I allowed coffee. The first person through the door was not a dramatic mirror of Jonah. Life is kinder than that sometimes. Crueler too. She was a young woman named Tessa, 19, with a backpack, a split lip almost healed, and a stare that dared everyone to disappoint her quickly. She stood near the entrance and looked at the room. The booths. The counter. The old diner sign from Rourke's mounted on the wall behind the register. The small lamp in the front window. I had turned it on before sunset. Tessa said, "Do I have to sign something?" Eventually, I said. She stiffened. "For the laundry schedule, not your soul." Rosa snorted behind the counter. Tessa looked at the soup pot. "How much?" I set a bowl in front of her. "Eat first. Oh, later." Her eyes moved to the sign. Then to me. "What do I owe later?" I thought about Jonah. About the $43 money order. About the harmonica behind glass. About Luke's handwriting traveling farther than his body ever got to. "Maybe nothing," I said. "Maybe someday you keep a light on for somebody else." She looked at the soup. Then sat. Outside, the December dark pressed against the windows. Inside, the lamp stayed on. I used to think a life had to be large to leave something behind. Now I know sometimes it only has to leave a light on.